Page 8 gives us a summary of Craig's strengths and needs. Reviewing his word structure, we see strengths in word length up to 3 syllables, strong, weak, and strong, weak stress patterns, and basic CV with sometimes a little bit of CVCV. Needs are everything, really, except for CVV. On the right, we see his feature strengths, stops, nasals, and glides, labial and coronal anterior place or alveolars, and some of the vowels. There's a little bit of contrast going on in voicing, but we didn't mention that as a true strength yet. We have decided that he's a therapy candidate, and so our next step is to figure out the therapy goals for a few weeks at least. The objective of phonological intervention is to give a boost to development. We're not actually changing somebody else. We're trying to activate the system to change itself. Following the principles of nonlinear phonology, we would like to address various levels of the phonological system, syllables, stress patterns, word lengths on the one hand, features and segments on the other, and the interaction of the two in terms of word position. So let's look at the possibilities for goals. Following principles of nonlinear phonology, we'd like to give a kickstart to word structure, features and segments over here, and the combination of the two, position and sequences, in the middle. This way we address the phonological system broadly and give it the best chance to get going and move ahead. Let's look at the possibilities for goals. We've already talked about his strengths and needs there. So let's see what we really need to target. Probably not length. He's doing okay. Stress, maybe he needs that, but he just turned 3, so he's doing okay for that. But really, the word shapes are still a bit at the low end of development. So we need to really target the basic word shapes of English, CVC and CVCV. Does everyone agree with that? Okay, so CVC and CVCV for the first treatment period. We can talk about segment choice and strategies after we select the segmental goals. But before we move on, should we target clusters too in this first treatment period?
I heard him say S when we were playing with the snake. So we could put S on the outside of CV extrametrically and get spy, stay, smee, snow, like snow. That way we avoid final consonants of CCVC, but get him to put S into words. If he gets this developmentally later target, maybe all of the simpler word structures will just appear, through what some researchers call implicational markedness. Some kids with protracted phonological development get word initial clusters before codas, so we cannot exactly always follow developmental order. And besides, this allows us to work on fricatives and word structure together, being more efficient.
I would rather take a developmental, more cautious approach. Yes, I heard him say a kind of S, but he couldn't imitate it easily when I asked, so it will take a lot of focus. And he is a very active boy. He likes to jump around with quick activities. Developmentally, children tend to learn codas and CVCV before they learn clusters. So I would say, let's leave it for the next block of treatment. One thing at a time will be enough for him.
Could we vote on this? How many want to try clusters in this first block? And how many don't? Okay, let's leave clusters for now. And multisyllabic words too. He did produce one word with 3 syllables, so that's showing signs of coming along. On to segments and features. Page 8 told us there were a lot of missing categories: fricatives, affricates, velars, liquids, so much to learn. For argument's sake, let's say we include all 3 categories in our first treatment period so we can find out where his system might want to go next. We can choose to focus on 1 or 2 at the end of that treatment period, perhaps. Okay, fricatives. Should we target individual fricatives or the category of fricative? I mean, the concept more.
I would say the whole category, and primarily with awareness and perceptual contrast activities at first. Let's build up the concept.
But awareness doesn't necessarily lead to production. He appears to be a concrete learner who likes action. I'd say let's pick S or F.
I guess it's time for another vote. How many want all with awareness and perception primarily? Okay, you both had excellent rationales, and there is evidence on both sides. But we're going with the majority here, so let's say fricatives are in at the awareness level.
Oh, man.
Now velars, we have a choice of the whole category again, just like we did with fricatives, k, g, ng, and arguably w, or just one.
I'm going to argue for just K. Let's get the idea across in awareness, but also give him some practice with the articulation, making it fun.
But from what I just heard about fricatives and word structure, the idea is to get concepts across as a foundation or...
Velars can be challenging. Over the years, there have been children in our studies who have learned primarily through awareness building and primarily through production training, so there seem to be both options there. Vote time again. Who would like to see us work on velars as a concept, the whole category? How about just K? Well, there's a tie. Well, we could do both then. Awareness of all and production practice with K. Jeff and Dave, you're seeming to be concerned about this.
They'll get over it.
Finally, liquids. Both L and R? Only L? Neither?
Definitely no liquids yet. He's just 3. By learning style, he really looks like a candidate for a developmental approach to goal selection.
I would say target both as a liquid category and see which one flies. It will strengthen the liquid category and provide distinction between them from the beginning. Again, if we target difficult consonants, less challenging ones may appear on their own.
Right. There is evidence that children with protracted phonological development often show what Pam Grumwell calls chronological mismatch. We can't rely on norms. Sometimes they can learn what we don't expect, especially if we are concrete with our approach.
I would say just target L, non-developmental for the category, but allowing the earlier L to be targeted rather than the later R.
You're saying hedging your bets.
Yep.
So let's vote again. Who is for both liquids right now? Who wants no liquids right now? Who wants only one, and which one?
We want L.
Okay, I get to decide. Insider knowledge based on the study he participated in. L it is.
So many choices. Isn't it at all clear what we should be doing in speech therapy? Is it always like this, that there are so many choices?
Most of the time, yes. No right answers, only well-argued options. Moving on to treatment strategies. Some clients are what I call focused risk takers. You can combine goals and choose later developing ones. Craig has a limited focusing ability, he just turned 3, and so let's approach each goal independently. For word structure production, we can use what he has. Stops, nasals, glides, labials, coronals. Well, only alveolars.
In awareness, could we use any segment at all, since we're not asking him to say anything?
Great idea. Yes, we can. Does anybody have a suggestion for what word structures to use to target our segments?
CBB.
For segments, we can only use CV in our first treatment block for production, although awareness and contrast activities could use CVC and CVCV. And finally, what about the order of goals? Who would target structure first for Craig?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that, and perhaps use both the rhythmic approach using moras to emphasize the English lax vowel plus coda syllable, as well as a CV basic unit approach to which things are added, C or another CV. Tune into our activity demos for some treatment ideas later. But what about fricatives, velars, and liquids? Does it matter what order? I might do fricatives first, the biggest category with awareness, then velars with awareness, and production, and finally L. But there is really no rationale for any of this. They are being introduced at this time, and by our second treatment period, we will know him a lot better and find best ways of teaching him. The first treatment period is almost diagnostic therapy or dynamic assessment. We learn from our clients as we try to help kickstart their system.
So what happened with Craig after the first 6 weeks?
A bit of a surprise. He did show some improvement on structure, CVC, CVCV, in his first 6-week treatment block, which was 3 times a week, and his vowels improved considerably without focusing on them. But the target that generalized most was word initial L. Not really expected and not developmental. A chronological mismatch, as Pam Grunwald said in the 1980s. In conclusion, I have a couple of questions for all of you. What do you see as the advantages of a nonlinear approach to phonological intervention? And secondly, what is your advice to learners and clinicians?
Speech sound acquisition is not always straightforward for every child, so by taking the nonlinear approach, it allows us to account for individual differences and reminds us to look at all aspects of speech development, focusing on using the child's strengths to work on their needs. My advice is to go into the scan with an open mind and take away from it what you like and find most useful.
I agree. And to add to that, I would encourage you to use whatever color coding or notation system that works best for you. There's no right or wrong answer. We might all fill out the scan slightly differently, but that's okay.
I like the idea of using old elements to support learning of new elements, using the principles of incremental learning. Remember that your treatment plan does not have to be perfect. You will see what works and what doesn't using diagnostic treatment, and you can change your plan based on that information.
I appreciate how a non-linear approach encourages you to look at phonology in multiple dimensions, and beyond just features and individual sounds. My advice to clinicians is to remember that there's no one way of targeting a goal.
I guess what I've taken most from this experience is that I've learned about how sequences affect other sequences. It really has helped me focus on paying attention to the different parts of the word, and so I can create better, more functional goals for the child. My advice is to not try to memorize the scan. Keep it in front of you as a reference. Use it as you need. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, and good luck to all of you watching. There is another practice data set from Dylan for you to answer, with an answer key on the website. Now on to the phonology videos.